Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about gluten and should we be gluten-free? Shouldn't we be gluten-free? What exactly does this mean? But if you have never seen me or don't know who I am, my name is Stacy and I created Ask Stacy Now Facebook page group to really give you information about autoimmune diseases as well as health in general. And although I'm a functionally trained counselor formally, I do realize that there is more to healing your situation, as well as more to what triggered an autoimmune disease or a symptom than just the immune system or what's going on in your gut. And so the reason for Ask Stacy Now really was to give you information about everything about your system and provide you tools that you could utilize to help heal your situation. I also created a program specially for people, mainly women, who are diagnosed with an autoimmune disease within the last 6 months, newly diagnosed, as well as people who are just having symptoms, but all of their test results have came back positive normal. And so I want you to have this information so that way you can arm yourself and be empowered. And if you decide that you want to go to a traditional physician, you have this information to take with you as well. And so if you're watching this live right now, if you could put a blue heart in the comment section down below, that would be wonderful. Or if you're not able to watch this live, if you want to put a red heart in the comment section below that shows me that you watched the replay, that would be wonderful. And if you want to put on there your location, that would be even better because that kind of gives me an idea of when I should be doing these lives to help with people with their schedules. But also I want to be very mindful of people's time zones when I give them a call or try to engage with them, that I do realize what their time zone is. So please put comments and hearts in the comments section for me so I kind of have an idea to know who's watching and if you're able to watch it during the live or the replay. So, hey Shelby. So I want to talk to you about gluten and the reason why, and I know I've talked about this before, and I really want to reiterate this, is because it's really important for people to understand that this is kind of not just a phase. And so when I originally was introduced to gluten intolerance or celiac disease, it actually came from, many of you know, my sister, who said that she was gluten intolerant. And I kind of blew it off and thought, oh, this is the latest and greatest craze. Everybody's going to be trying this, and now all of a sudden we can't have gluten. You know, we went from can't have eggs. I mean, the health and wellness arena kind of changes from time to time, and it also changes based on who you follow. And so when I decided to become a functional nutrition counselor, I really went on to look at gluten because it was really kind of a big deal to me to figure out exactly, especially with my condition, me having multiple sclerosis, how that looked. And I was absolutely amazed when I started doing the research on autoimmune diseases in general. And so I think there's now 80 autoimmune diseases, everything from acne to Alzheimer's. And so if you have any of the 80 autoimmune diseases, it is in your best interest to give up gluten. Also, the other part of this is people who are taking an acid-reducing medication, you should definitely be giving up gluten because this causes huge problems with your digestive system. And I kind of want to explain to you what symptoms of celiac disease as well as sensitivity or intolerance. With gluten, with celiac disease, you actually notice they're pretty significant issues that happen. I mean, like major cramping, there can be bleeding, there can be all kinds of things. And so if you're having significant issues after you eat, definitely contact your dietitian or gastroenterologist because you may be gluten sensitive, you may have celiac disease, and it's really nice to know what the difference is. Now, gluten sensitivity is a little bit different. And so I think I have used the car analogy before, but I want to kind of explain to you where I'm going with this. So a lot of people eat gluten, and they've ate gluten for years and years and years and have never had a problem. And then all of a sudden one day they have a symptom and really don't understand what that is. And so when I say unexplained symptoms, it's not just unexplained from your doctor who has ran tests and everything came back normal. It's really about unexplained symptoms from the person as well. So, I have ate the same for 25 years. I've never had a problem. And today I woke up and I had significant joint pain or back pain or puffy eyes or brain fog or fatigue. And I really don't understand why. Well, the body itself actually holds everything. And so it's like a bucket. And when we look at what we've talked about before, the 8 pillars of wellness, which is physical, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, those 8 buckets are all, I look at them like faucets. And you turn them on all full blast and they fill your bucket up pretty quickly. But when we're children, we're actually given a lot of the things that cause toxic overload years later. And so a lot of us have used products or taken our kids to McDonald's or fast food restaurants and said, well, you know what, I'm fine, and that's what I ate when I was younger. Well, I have to tell you, I was completely healthy when I was younger, or what I thought was healthy when I was younger. And then years later, my body burden or my toxic overload from everything that I had ingested or breathed or put on my skin had taken its toll. And again, with the stress of everything else that goes on, your body is not able to function properly. It's not able to detox. And so looking back now, years later, I do realize that I had symptoms. And as I've said before, I did suffer with IBS and went to a gastroenterologist when I had not even started kindergarten yet. So when I say normal, I guess we just assumed that was normal. So if your child is experiencing a lot of or you're experiencing a lot of gastric issues, constipation is a huge indicator that there may be a gluten sensitivity, as well as, like I said, fatigue, swelling, because gluten is constantly causing inflammation in the body. And although we don't realize that there's inflammation, it is still significant. And constant inflammation definitely deteriorates and tears down the body's ability to function properly. So if you already have an autoimmune disease, you should never eat gluten. And I do know people who have arthritis or acne. I know someone that has cystic acne, and when I explained to them that they should be off gluten, what they said was, I only eat it once in a while or occasionally. But what I really want to make sure I reiterate, hi Shar, is that when you eat even occasionally, it actually stirs inflammation in your body for, the studies are saying, between 3 and 6 months. So you literally, if it is flaring up your immune system, if you have an autoimmune disease and it flares up your immune system for 6 months, the inflammation, then you really only need to eat 2 rolls a year to keep your body in a constant state of inflammation and keep your autoimmune disease active. So I want you to think about that. I know it's extremely difficult, and I know I have had my fair share, being gluten-free, of some stuff that I would not even feed slop hogs. But there are getting to be some really, really good gluten-free products out there. The problem with people when they decide to go gluten-free, however, is that they decide to look at other processed foods. Like when I first went gluten-free, the only thing that I found was I was eating a lot of corn chips, a lot of chips and salsa, those kind of things, and kept thinking, wow, being gluten-free really, really limits me. And then I started looking at things a little differently and tweaking things a little bit. So I'm very, very blessed to have a family member who is a chef. And one of the great opportunities that I had was I kind of just said to him, okay, here's my family's favorite meal. Make it gluten-free. Go. And he did some really great things, and if he couldn't, a lot of them involve pasta. Those aren't really the best anyway, and we know that when we're diabetic or we're having some issues with our weight, eating pastas in general are not necessarily good things. So whether they're gluten-free or not kind of doesn't really make a difference unless you're using like a spaghetti squash noodles. That's completely different because obviously that's a vegetable. But when you're going and buying processed gluten-free noodles, it kind of makes you feel like you're normal again, like you can eat what everybody else eats, except when you get the crappy products. And so I really want to be able to provide people with, if you're going to eat spaghetti or pastas or make things, here's alternatives that you can do. Just know that they're not necessarily the healthiest, because just like any processed food, whether it's gluten-free, sugar-free, or anything like that, it's not the best. The best is homemade. Do we all have time to do homemade? Absolutely not. So every once in a while, you got to throw something together that's going to use some processed or prepackaged food. I get that. But if you can have the choice between doing a really good tasting gluten-free pasta, and I gotta tell you a little secret, I actually swapped one out one time because my family is not like me and they don't necessarily see the benefit in gluten-free, and I swapped it out and they didn't know any different. And so that's always a good one. But I always make sure absolutely that I know what tastes good prior to even trying to feed it to my family. And if you have children who are used to eating a standard American diet, letting them know you're going gluten-free or trying to swap things out that don't taste good will end very badly for you. And also, when you have a standard American family diet that's ingrained within your family, it's extremely difficult for you to find gluten-free things out in fast food world. So right now, my big one is Chipotle. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a huge Mexican fan. I was before I went gluten-free. I still am. And really, that's a really great one. So if you're gonna go gluten-free, obviously the best thing to do is invest in a really good cookbook once you find someone that resonates with you. I always want to preface that because so many times when we're looking for something, we find something on the internet or even a physician that does our area that we're really looking for, and we jump right to them without really seeing if they work with us or if we even like what they do or like who they are as a person. And so what I would encourage you to do is go to the library and get a couple books, and I will actually put some suggestions down in the comments as well as starting out. If you're just starting out with gluten-free, here's my suggestion: start low and slow, because anybody that says, oh, I'm going to go gluten-free, I'm going to go completely gluten-free, and I'm going to do it for a week, is setting themselves up for failure. And although I don't want you to trigger your immune system and trigger inflammation, knowing that if you eat one thing, it can trigger it for 6 months, I really, really want this to be a sustainable change, because although some people, once they clean up their system and their gut gets healed and those kind of things, can go back to gluten, but they don't really know if the inflammation is continuing, if it's that you've emptied out your toxic overload and that the gluten is now adding it in, but your bucket's not full yet. But there are some people that will never be able to eat gluten again. It is always just my recommendation that once you've went gluten-free and you found some really great products and you've learned to kind of swap some things out, it's just really best for you and your family to completely go gluten-free. Gluten has been it's been triggered so many autoimmune diseases because of the way the proteins are, because it mimics your body tissues, so your body doesn't realize if it's attacking the protein and trying to break it down to make it edible and usable by your body, or if it's actually attacking your tissues. And that's a problem. A lot of people with thyroid issues, gluten is a big one because it does so closely mimic the thyroid tissue. And that's kind of why there's so much with Hashimoto's and autoimmunes related to the thyroid, Graves as well. So the other thing is, hi Sue, is if you are crazy about gluten and you crave gluten and you've got to have it, and when I say go gluten-free, you literally want to curl up in a ball on the floor and cry, that is a huge indicator that you have gluten intolerance. The addiction or the craving is a huge symptom of intolerance, and you definitely need to give it up. Again, I'm going to be providing a lot of really good cookbooks, but bread is a really hard gluten-free substitution. I've had my fair share of breads that have not been the best. I kind of consider them crouton-ish because they taste like they're toasted even though they weren't toasted. So that being said, I do want to, on Ask Stacy Now, if you go onto the Facebook page, the Facebook group, if you're not a member, go ahead. I'm going to start putting in the resources, some really good swaps. So if you like pastas and you want to just try one that tastes exactly like a regular pasta, here's one. Or if you want one that's got a little bit more nutrient, here's what I'm going to give you some other options. But one of the really great gluten-free breads that I've tried is Udi's, UDI. It's actually really good. It's very soft. It tastes kind of like a normal bread, and I guess normal is, but also if you have a gluten intolerance, sourdough breads sometimes are very easy for people to tolerate because of the way it's processed and the way it's baked and the properties within it, it makes it much easier for people to tolerate sourdough bread. So if you have to get a bread, sourdough may be your choice. But also you may want to check with your local bakery and just see if they offer a gluten-free bread. And sometimes they do. Sometimes they mark out specific days of the week, so they actually only make that kind. So you can actually get that, and you don't have to worry about cross-contamination. When you first start being gluten-free, you really don't know what exactly is in gluten, and it becomes quite overwhelming. And so that's why I always recommend going to the library, getting a cookbook to begin with, because really you need the structure and you need somebody kind of holding you by the hand and giving you meal ideas. Once you become much more acclimated to what gluten is in, you definitely understand exactly what you can eat, what you can choose, what you can't, and what to look for. But in the beginning, it is extremely difficult to fathom everything, because gluten isn't only in our food. Gluten is actually in our shampoos, in our lipsticks, in our sunscreens, in our lotions. So when somebody becomes intolerant, sensitive to gluten, not insensitive, sensitive to gluten, you've got to realize that the 8 faucets that are going really could have gluten in them all. So your body, your body products, your makeup, your food, your laundry detergents. And so although you think, well, I'm not putting gluten on my skin, I'm very careful about that. If it's on your laundry detergent and you lay in bed for, let's just say, even 5 hours a night, you're laying against that, your skin is absorbing that. So it's going to be extremely important for you to start low and slow. Don't become overwhelmed. Don't give it up. The other issue that I really want to talk about is a lot of people, when they say, oh, I think I have some gluten sensitivities, or you know what, I have an autoimmune disease, I've never noticed a problem, but I'm going to go ahead and go gluten-free. There are 3 main inflammatory foods that are usually the big ones. Now, every food can be inflammatory, so I'm definitely not saying that, but there are the 3 big ones, and these are the hardest ones for people to hear, and I completely understand. I'm in the same category. Gluten is one. Sugar is one, and we're going to be talking about that next week, exactly what sugar is doing to your body. And anyone that knows me knows I am a huge, huge sweet tooth, so I feel ya. Believe me, I gotcha. And then the other one is dairy. And that one is extremely difficult too, because once you start telling people what they have to cut out, those are big ones. Those are big staples in our diets. And so I want somebody to go low and slow. So go to the library, get a gluten-free cookbook. I'll put resources in the comments or on the Facebook page in the resources. And then find one that you really like that has recipes that your family will eat. Find one where it has crazy ingredients or your family won't even eat. Doesn't really make any sense to begin with. So I'll give you some that I really like that are, I was raised on a standard American diet, so I kind of like my comfort foods. And if it tastes like crap, I'm not going to eat it. So if you're waiting for me to be a cheerleader, like, hey, go gluten-free, go all these things, and then just do it because it's healthy and screw it good taste, I'm not one of those people. If it tastes like poop, then I'm going to reach out to my nephew and say, hey, can you make this better? And if you can't, do you have any substitutions I can make? Or in my case, because I do have an autoimmune disease and I am gluten intolerant, I used to crave gluten. But if he can't make it better, then it may be my choice just to forego it. I mean, I hate it, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So definitely, if you are thinking about being gluten-free, if you have an autoimmune disease, definitely. If you've ever had symptoms like joint pain, swelling, fatigue, brain fog, in all kinds of digestive issues, oh my gosh, constipation, diarrhea, gluten is major digestive issues. It's just insane. Or if you take a proton pump inhibitor, you have to be gluten-free. So, food for thought. I just want to kind of throw that one out there. If you have any questions, if you could be gluten intolerant, if you have celiac, there is testing that can be done to see. Sometimes you'll pop a false negative, and and it's not really, those are sometimes problematic. I'm not going to lie, when you have some of that testing done. But a lot of times people just want the hard and fast data to see it. However, just know no one's really good with gluten. Like I said, with 80 autoimmune diseases, 50 million people suffering with autoimmune diseases, probably the other 3/4 of the people suffering with symptoms that are unexplained, that's signs of inflammation, and that's what gluten causes, is inflammation. So I just want to throw that out there. If you've ever had any symptoms where you just couldn't explain them, put a thumbs up in the bottom or a thumbs down or something like that in the comments, so I know that other people are suffering with autoimmune diseases or suffering with symptoms. So even if you're watching this live or on a replay, put a thumbs up or raise a hand where you're raising your hand in the comments below to let me know that if you've ever had symptoms and you're just like, man, I don't know. Or if you have any questions, please DM me. But if you want any other additional information, like I said, resources, or just to see my other Facebook Lives or podcasts, go on Ask Stacy Now Facebook page group. And if you're not a member, definitely like it. But I'm definitely curious about what everybody is interested in knowing. So if you have a topic that you would like to either have me discuss with you or have an expert on, if I don't know, I'll definitely get an expert on to talk about it with you. If there is something that you want to know about your health, your surroundings, anything that you want to know about your well-being, let me know. Drop it in the comments below, because I really want to provide you as much information as you need. But also I want it to be relevant. If it's not relevant, that doesn't really make any sense to give you that information. So I want to wish you an absolutely spectacular morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this, if you're watching the replay. I want to thank you all for watching me here. This is really short, but everybody should be gluten-free. I'm sorry to say it, and I know it sucks and it doesn't taste good all the time, but I really want to help out with giving you the resources to get you to do whatever it is you need to do to get yourself well. So please tune in to Ask Stacy Now Facebook group every Wednesday at 1. That's where all these Facebook Lives are going to be from this point on. And so I will be posting them as needed, and if you want me to invite you, definitely let me know, but that's where I'll be. So I appreciate you, and I want you to have an absolutely healthy and beautiful day. Bye-bye.